I've learned how to transmute pain into something that can help me grow and help me expand and turn pain into a gift. So basically, this is what my work is. And actually, many people around me, their biggest pains, their biggest traumas, their biggest core wounds are their gifts now, what they're using to support others. So for me, it was a lot around the father wound and parent wound also. Not having a masculine presence in my life, a man that I can see what is a man. That's why I was looking at Bruce Lee. That's why I was looking at Martin Luther King. That's why I was looking at so many different directions, looking for a man to look up to. And somehow, naturally, also with time, I realized, without even being aware of that in the beginning, that I started to do the same for others. So yeah, pain can be beautiful if we know how to move through that. And this is a big piece of the men's work, actually, very, very big piece, how we can be with our own feminine, which can be flowy river, or it can be a huge wave, it can be the ocean. So how can we be still inside of the storm? How can we be the eye of the storm and be still in that? And this is a daily practice, how we can be with life, not just the feminine ourselves or the woman around us, or how can we be still with life and still harvest the beauty of that?
Welcome to the Power Plant Body Podcast. My name is Taylor, and this show is focused on self-development. I've found in my own life, as well as the lives of my clients that I've worked with, that it's human nature to focus on goals in one area of life, or maybe two areas of your life if you're lucky, to the detriment of the other areas of your life. For this reason, there's a tool that I use with my clients called the Goal Wheel that is specifically designed to shed light on how you might be preventing yourself from living the fullest life possible. In a nutshell, the Goal Wheel is a circle drawn on a piece of paper that's being divided into 8 quadrants. The 8 quadrants are family and friends, romance, fun and recreation, health and fitness, finances, personal growth and spirituality, career, and physical environment. Basically, you give yourself a score between 1 and 10 for each of these areas of your life, and that allows you to see where you're excelling and putting your attention, but it also shows you the areas of your life that you're currently neglecting. The areas of life that we neglect are often the areas that we need to work on the most, and that's exactly why I started this podcast, to share insights from teachers who are experts in one or more of these areas of the Goal Wheel. Each interview is meant to inspire you to take action in one of those areas so that you can live a more fulfilled and balanced life. To get your hands on a free copy of the Goal Wheel PDF so that you can use it to create meaningful goals and take steps to achieve them, head over to powerplantbody.com/free-tools. You'll find a bunch of other free tools and resources there as well. Nemanja Sonero is a movement specialist, a transformational coach, and a lover of all the joy and challenge that life brings. Nemanja found his purpose of inspiring and supporting men and women to step into their purpose and power after navigating an objectively challenging childhood, having survived through 2 wars and overcoming daunting obstacles. He now serves as a conduit for love and inspiration, embracing his natural gifts of movement and intuition to coach and mentor men and women to raise their consciousness and live their highest potential. One of my favorite topics of discussion is the interplay between masculine and feminine energies, both in human relationships and as it manifests in the world around us. Nemanja is a masterful speaker and a translator of how these two energies work together in creation, as well as how they pose challenges when not owned and directed properly. He is able to use metaphor and examples from partner dancing to magnificently illustrate how the light and the dark sides of masculine and feminine energies work and how we can begin owning and mastering them in our own lives. I thoroughly enjoyed my conversation with Nemanja, and I know that you will as well. So, without any further delay, I bring you my conversation with Nemanja Sonero. Nemanja, I appreciate you being on my podcast. I'm really looking forward to diving into your concepts, your ideas, your inspirations around masculinity, femininity, and dance especially. How that all comes together for you and how you help people embody it in their own lives. And before we get started, I just invite you to take the next few minutes to open up about who you are and what you're currently doing with your life and your practice.
Yeah, it's always an interesting question when someone asks me who I am. That is such a relative, very often changing term, because I feel my life is so alive and active, and so many things are happening that I feel constantly I am changing. So currently, I can share a bit. I'm really passionate about men's work and working with men and supporting them in their emergence, in their opening, in their expansion, growth, initiation also, which is a beautiful topic of how men nowadays are being initiated, which was happening in the past as a part of the collective tribes and how it was in back in the days. So it's a very interesting process how we can do it in these times. So this is a big passion of mine, and I also started working with women, with women's work. So it's interesting how these dynamics are shifting. I'm a big fan of movement since very young age. So that includes dancing, martial arts, any movement practice. So I'm really deep in the exploration of that. I love photography. I love videography. I love many, many things at the moment. But these are my three main core practices and work that I do.
I love it. So men's work, dance, and photography and art.
Yeah. These are my three pillars in this moment.
I love it.
Yeah.
Men's work is near and dear to my heart too. I found it about 4 or 5 years ago. I really enjoyed hearing you speak about what men's work is. I felt you really defined it well, and you spoke both about men's work and men's circles and the difference between the two. Maybe if you're open to it, I'd like to start just by getting your insights into what a men's circle is. And you've also talked about women's circles, what a men's circle is, and how does that part but different to men's work?
Well, I mean, it's connected, of course. It's intertwines with the other. It weaves together. Yet, men's work, I feel it's more wide in the sense of what is happening, because men's circle can also be quite colorful in the system how it works. Back in the days, especially in the ancient times, men's circles were quite normal around the fire. So men would gather around the fire and just share their stories around hunting, around whatever is moving. And how in the modern days it's happening that it's basically men just coming together in a circle, in whatever form that is, or location, just sharing what is most alive inside of them. And of course, they're asking for support, etc., etc. And I feel this is a piece of men's work. Men's work itself is a lot around embodying multiple layers of our consciousness, of our energies, which maybe we don't tap into so much in the circle itself. So it's an everyday work. So men's work is like, for me, an everyday practice to start really living from that place, not just practicing, not just gathering. So it's like really a lifestyle. And this is very, very deep and important part of my life. And I notice the men's work in every little thing that I do, whether I cook, whether I communicate with my partner, how I relate, how I speak to you now, my posture. So it's a lot of awareness around these aspects of how I want to be as a man in this world.
Yeah. And I've heard you, when we think about prehistory or even throughout the earliest parts of history where men would gather around fire circles, or, they'd talk about the ongoings of their life. It's easy to think, well, we have that, just by going out to the bar with our friends or watching a football game, but it's different than that. When you think about a men's circle and the differences in support between a men's circle and what a guy might think of as a circle of friends who would go to the bar with, what's the difference between those things? What can a man expect out of a men's circle that he can't get from his circle of friends?
Well, both can be very beautiful. Of course, even going to a bar can be letting go, or, it depends, of course, on what is the content. I feel men's circle is very specific in the way how we relate. So it is a safe container created, most of the time with specific, I'll use the word rules, on how we engage, how we communicate, how we receive the other. And it's all all welcoming space. So everything really is allowed there, which maybe in a bar you're not going to do, of course. Maybe you're going to share verbally, but in Mexico you can express yourself physically, you can be loud, you can be so many things which you maybe don't feel safe to do in a different kind of space. And this is the power of gathering men in one place with this kind of an intention of sharing, of being authentic, of healing, of no restraints, no holding back. And this is a big gift which I feel, honestly, I feel all men need. And this is why I'm so passionate about how we can bring this to everyone in these times and age.
When you say that all men need this in their life, I've heard you mention this before, that the times that we're in are, as Dylan would say, the times they are changing, and you've noticed a change in how things are transpiring in the world. What is it about men's work? What is it about having a men's circle that men across the board pretty well universally could benefit from? What are we looking for?
Well, there's many things, but first thing that comes is safety, for example, to feel safe to be who we are and explore actually who we are, because I feel it's not so easy. Of course, it's subjective, but it's not so easy in the social construct we have, the modern society we live in. It's not so easy to be always who we are, because we live in a specific structure of rules and setups and behavior patterns, etc., and it's not very welcoming, all of us, to be very frank. So to express that, that's why we have this circle. So, okay, how can I, if I feel anger, for example, how can I express that also physically without just sitting and speaking about anger? If I feel anger, hey, like, can I curse?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So if I'm like fucking angry and frustrated, I want to show that. If you want to do that on the street in a bar, it's not gonna be received well. So when we have it in a men's circle, you want to express that so the energy can actually move through the body. Once the energy is moved, also witnessed by others, the healing begins. But if we suppress it, we hold it in, we just go, we hold it, suppress it, put it deeper and deeper under the rug, it will eventually leak out through, in manners and ways we don't want to. Maybe it's saying something to someone we love, which is not, nice, or it can be, I don't know, in many ways, but you understand what I mean. So it will leak out and become shadowy. It will become toxic, and we don't want that. That's why we want to meet, we want to express, we want to be received in that, and we want to heal in that process.
Something I find really interesting about you when it comes to men, or when it comes to facilitating men's work, and when it comes to facilitating masculine growth, is that you have an approach that includes what traditionally would be considered a feminine thing, which is dance, right? And you're a very a talented dancer, and you teach on your Instagram account. I loved hearing how you use dance, or how you've learned through dance the interplay between masculine and feminine, and how those two in dance can really show you how they're turning up in life. Can you expand on that? Maybe even first, how did you get into dance, and how did that turn into what it's become for you?
Yeah. Well, to begin with, I was always fascinated by movement since I was a kid. I remember watching Bruce Lee movies when I was like 7 or 8. And when you look at him, it's a martial art, but still it's movement. It's an expression of the body in whatever way that is. So I'm fascinated since a very young age with him and other martial artists. And then I remember I was always curious about, okay, how does it feel to move through, I don't know, jazz, when I saw jazz on TV. And in the beginning, I didn't have any training. There was nothing in my city, especially in the 90s in Serbia, there was no opportunity for that. There was war, everything was closed, so there was no dancing as a topic at all, as an access. So how it began, I remember I was skipping school a lot. I was quite antisocial. I couldn't relate with my friends. So I just left schools quite often. I would go to see my brother at his work. And I just remember this sentence. He said, "Would you like to come to me to capoeira, with me to capoeira?" And I had no idea what is capoeira, but I just felt a yes, because my brother was speaking of men's work, my brother was my role model, like the man in the house, because my father left early. So he was the man I was looking up to. So if he said, "Let's go," I said, "Let's go." And so, yeah, it began with that. So I was like, okay, capoeira, exploring that kind of movement, music, conflict, physical interaction, physical, hit. So it began with this. And of course, I started later exploring ballet, jazz, hip hop, all of that embodies movement. I was just going for that as much as I could. And this affair lasts for already 20 plus years. So this was my beginning with movement. And interestingly enough, when you say movement is like feminine practice, it is. If we think of movement, it is a feminine way of expressing. Yet there are so many masculine ways to express through dancing. And that can be maybe found in different kind of dances and styles. But the masculine and the feminine exists both inside of dancing. And this I found very fascinating. So how can I be both in that? And I still feel, even after all these two plus decades, I feel I'm only beginning to scratch the surface of what is possible. So that's quite interesting to see that the more I know, the less I feel I know. And the more I feel humbled to just really release all the concepts and opinions, what I think is right or wrong, and just find a new way of being a dancer and also being a man, which is for me very much connected.
Yeah, it speaks of the beginner's mind.
Yeah.
There's something, an avenue that I want to go down, but maybe we'll leave it for just a moment longer, which is, you mentioned your brother and mentorship. I know that's a big part of what you teach, what you speak about is the idea of mentors. But before taking a departure to there, just to go down that dance path just a moment longer, I loved how you've spoken about, you've spoken about how, like in partner dancing, for instance, right? How the man traditionally will lead the woman, and it's through his direction, it's through his masculine embodiment of dance. It allows the feminine to fully, I wish I could remember the words that you've used, but do you know what I'm talking about?
I don't know the words, but I do know the topic, so I can say it now in my
freshness. Yeah, I'd love for you to expand on that.
Yeah, so let's start from some basic concepts to begin with, which is often maybe misunderstood. We all have men and women. We have the masculine and the feminine inside of us. Now, majority of men in this planet have a masculine core essence, but we also have a feminine energy inside of us, an expression. Some more, some less, but we all have them both. Same for women; they have masculine and feminine, and these polarities can be also worked on, developed, amplified, and explored in many, many ways. Yet again, we have, for example, I have a very masculine core essence, but, for example, my leadership is very feminine. So I'm very intuitive. I'm sensing things, and I'm understanding space and people through energies, and just a very, 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 like I said, feminine way of being and leading and interacting. And dancing is also a very beautiful way how we can explore it, because it's a very visual representation of a concept we now talk about. So if you look at a couple dance, any salsa, bachata, kizomba, tango, doesn't matter. You have a man and you have a woman. Good. Now, inside of man, you have masculine and feminine. So to lead, he needs his masculine to be very clear, To be very precise, he needs to be grounded physically with his knees in the earth, so he can carry his own core, his own weight, and through that process, through his core, lead the woman in different directions, which is basically showing her where to move. So it's not about pulling her, pushing her. No, it's like he's creating space for her and allowing her to enter that space. It's almost like an invitation, not a lead. And that is, for me, leadership. When you create a space for the feminine, she will show up. And same for the woman. If she follows, she's in her feminine. She's also flowing, but also she's understanding how to surrender, how to let go, how to be led. And the last piece, which is very important, for the man to lead, he needs to have a deep connection to his feminine. Because he cannot understand how the feminine moves, what she needs, if he doesn't have a deep connection to his own feminine. So this is a bit of for some, it's a bit of a confusion or paradigm. Like, okay, like how do I switch that? It can be very contradictory, but you have to have a deep connection to your feminine to be a good leader, not just in dance, but in life.
Yeah, I remember when I first heard you speak about that, how I had never heard it spoken about in the way that you did. But as soon as I heard it, it clicked. It made sense from my own experience and from things I've read or heard before, seen in life. And it's something that you've spoken about, which I really found interesting, especially as it applies to men's work, men's circles. You know, this when men get together and work on themselves and support each other to embody the masculine fully and with respect. I've heard you mention that when a man in dance, or in life for that matter, is not fully present in his masculine or doesn't trust it, then the feminine, it doesn't create a space where the feminine can trust the masculine. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, there's two parts in this. One is that she will surrender deeper if he's embodying his clarity, his presence, his leadership. She will feel safe that, hey, he can actually guide me into moving whatever direction. Again, I'm speaking not just dancing, but life, overall relationship, same concept. And there's this other aspect of for the woman to practice her own surrender, to practice her own trust, and to give trust instead of only asking for trust. This is another piece of the feminine work for the woman. Because if she only can move when he creates safe space, it creates, from my experience, a bit of a disbalance and sometimes a bit too much pressure to the men that only she will let go if he has fully embodied the trust, which is not the case. I mean, I do this work, you do this work, but you probably know that this is not a destination. It's a constant journey of getting up and falling and making mistakes. And I see it in my own relationship. You know, I can be a great leader, and I can completely fuck up the moment. So it's really it's work for the both. That's why I feel both need to do their own part and support each other, even when we fall, to help each other up. So yeah.
Maybe I think it's worth clarifying what you feel the masculine and feminine are, because I guess there's two parts to every individual. There's a masculine and feminine in the man, and there's a masculine and feminine in the woman. And they work off of each other in the individual, and they work off each other in partnership.
Yeah.
When you think about those two energies in a man, and for a woman for that matter, how would you describe that to someone? How do they know what these two things are that are inside them and how they manifest in the world?
Well, I'll try to simplify it. Maybe I like to use an analogy. For example, if I speak about the masculine, I often imagine this mountain and this very... I'm not a big fan of this word stoic, but let's say stoic vision. And when I think of the feminine, she's the river, and the man is the banks of the river, and this mountain that holds that river so she can flow. if there are no banks, the river will just spill out everywhere. So for me, the feminine is something that is a continuous flow, something that constantly moves as the wind, as the water, as it's an eternal shift. I mean, this is what our planet is. This is what the universe is constantly is in shift. And for me, masculine is something that is pure presence. That is very like these river banks. It's there. It's very clear that you can sense that you can be in that space in calmness, in peace, in stillness. I guess stillness is the proper word. And this is a very short reply, short explanation of that. And for example, specific elements of the masculine is presence. It's clarity. It's clear, penetrative direction in all of the aspects. In energy, it can also be translated into sex. In many other aspects. And the feminine for me again is the flow, is the ever changing. It's life itself. And to go even deeper, I define not just masculine and feminine. I also split them up in two more pieces. I define it as the dark feminine and the dark masculine, the light masculine, the light feminine, which is an ancient concept that comes from Tibet, which is that we both, like the yin and yang, have the light and the dark. And so as the masculine, and so as the feminine. And that makes it even maybe more clear how we can interact with these energies in this world. And not to go, again, this is a whole different topic, but in short, the dark represents the earth, the matter, the everything that is solid that comes from below, and everything that is light is more conscious in connection to the universe, in connection to space. So these are two, when in alignment, we meet in the middle as a soul. And this is how I define also masculine and feminine energies. And it's crucial to nourish all of them. Yeah. I hope I didn't astray too far, but I'm trying to.
That was beautiful. No, that was very well articulated. You actually reminded me. You brought up Bruce Lee earlier. He was a big idol of yours, and when you spoke about the river going down the banks and the river being the feminine, the banks of the river being the masculine, the image or the thought I had is I can't remember exactly the quote, but Bruce Lee said, become the teapot. Water can crash and flow, but it takes the form of whatever the container is.
Yeah.
Is it fair to say that quote is a similar representation of the masculine and feminine?
Yeah, in some way. Martial arts, you can also see it very clearly. You can, like Bruce Lee mentioned, like water, especially with a punch, like it can come from different places. It can come a lot from the core also. If I would speak about masculine and feminine, like let's say the core is the masculine and he wants to create this, but the transmission of that energy is, for me, I would define it maybe as feminine if I really break that down. But it needs both. It needs really both. It's incomplete without one. And I feel, especially men in this world, and I work a lot with men also in dancing, and I see there's a lot of denial. There's a lot of denial of the feminine energy without maybe understanding what that is fully. And that's why I say, if you really want to connect to your partner, there has to be a deep connection with your feminine. That's the foundation of that.
That makes me think of another example that comes up for me is one of my favorite thought experiments or concepts to just remind myself of is like a concert pianist who's mastered the piano. They spent their life learning music theory. And if you think about it, music theory is very containing, and it's very like there's only so many rules, and there's only so many ways that you can play notes, and only so many combinations. And a concert pianist, once they've mastered it, they can get up on stage and they can forget the rules and then just flow within the confines that they've learned. And it reminds me very much of your martial arts metaphor or analogy where you've practiced the movements, you've practiced understanding how to move your body, and then when it comes to the moments of, whether you're sparring or whatever you're doing, to flow and allow your body to move through these movements that it knows innately.
Yeah, I always say it's basically, I tell this to my advanced students. I tell them, okay, now all that you know, I want you to forget all of that. I don't want you to know any of these things. I want you to lose all concepts and all opinions or whatever, just lose it and come back. Basically, it's a full circle. And I love this quote. I forgot who said it already, but I use it for many, many years, which is, the basic step is the first thing you learn and the last thing you master. And, this is something you come first class to dancing, you would like 1, 2, 3, 5, 6, 7, and you want to learn. So you go into puberty, learn 10,000 moves because you want more and more and more. And then one day, and same in martial arts, same I feel in life now as I'm moving, you want to go back to the basics. You just want to give yourself fully to the step. Even if it's a basic step, it's now expressed masterfully, artfully. Now that basic step can guide the woman, for example, as a man, to guide her into the places she's never been before, just through the basic steps. And same in martial arts. My masters used very, very little movements. They didn't show off. They didn't do any fancy tricks. No, they were very, very basic, but you cannot approach them. You cannot touch them. And that's for me mastery in some way. Yeah,
I love that. Yeah, it's beautiful. You spoke about the circle going through and coming back, to basically master where you started. A big concept or a big part of men's work and initiation. You spoke about initiation earlier too. A way that it's been more easily comprehended by us in modern times is this idea of the hero's journey. And for you, it appears that you've come full circle and you're in this moment of contribution of bringing your gifts to the world around you through dance, through men's work, through coaching and teaching through masculinity and femininity and balancing the two. What did that journey look like for you? What would you say, where were you before you left on this hero's journey, and what was the process to come full circle to where you are today?
Yeah, I'll just show. I have this tattoo, this spiral, and the spiral always reminds me of not just one circle, but multiple. So if I look back into my life and how I began, there was this small circle, and then I went again to begin. That the next one is a bit bigger. The next one is a bit bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And I feel there's a new one is now for me opening. And I feel to make the last one, the full round, it took me, how I perceive it took me, let's say 5, 6 years. And now I feel there's a new wave coming, a new one, which is inviting me to step into something even more deeper, even into more my authentic self, to strip down even more layers of all the masks and all that I have myself covered with, so I can be, even now as I speak to you, more me. And this, I guess we all started this journey when we were kids. And for me, one of the layers was two things. I remember as a kid, there was this magazine called The Third Eye, which was my father's favorite magazine. So it was a A5 format, and he had all the issues for like 10, 15 years, and it was all about esoterics. So this was my initiation, because it initiated me to curiosity of what is beyond this room, what is beyond this family, using my imagination and reading about UFOs and werewolves and, I don't know, Kundalini or whatever the hell I was reading. And also another initiation that time was growing up in a dysfunctional family and a dysfunctional country.
Yeah.
So that was my initiation, also having an absent father at the same time, something I was longing for so much. And when I look at it now, I see it as a gift. If I go into the feeling of that in that moment, of course, it's painful, but all that happened in my life was a gift. All of the dysfunctionality, all of the arguments and fights, the war I've been through, the no food, the so much that I lived through was, I feel my whole life was an initiation over and over, bigger and bigger circle. And it's hard to trust that when it's happening, the pain in the moment. But it's important to zoom out, especially now, and to really know that whatever pain might be coming in my life, there's a purpose. And this is my way of seeing how I can initiate myself or support others to be initiated as a modern man. Yeah.
Yeah, that's obviously a tremendously difficult thing to have to go through as a child. And to have gone through that. And by the way, I love your analogy of the spiral. I don't think I've ever heard that before. And, I know that after this conversation, I'm going to take some time to really think about how that's looked in my own life, because I'm sure, I know for a fact that, looking back, I could see that spiral, taking effect in my own life. And it makes me wonder where I am right now. It's a beautiful, beautiful analogy. I appreciate you sharing that. And, in fact, anybody watching or listening to this, I'm sure that they're also thinking the same thing. Like, oh my goodness. Yeah, this is something that, could really help me take stock of where I am in my life. And also, something that you just mentioned, look back on prior pain and prior trauma and be grateful for the gifts that it's given you, that you're now able to use positively and generatively on this part of your journey.
Yeah, it's, how do I say it? I've learned, whether it's through teachers or through experience, how to transmute pain into something that can help me grow and help me expand and turn pain into a gift. So basically, this is what my work is. And actually, many people around me, their pain, their biggest pains, their biggest traumas, their biggest core wounds are their gifts now, what they're using to support others. I don't know if someone was an alcoholic, he went through a 12-step program, and now many of them are actually supporting others to go through the same journey, to heal. So for me, it was a lot around the father wound and parent wound also. Not having a masculine presence in my life, a man that I can see what is a man. That's why I was looking at Bruce Lee. That's why I was looking at, I don't know, Martin Luther King. That's why I was looking at so many different directions, looking for a man to look up to. And somehow, naturally, also with time, I realized that without even being aware of that in the beginning, that I started to do the same for others. And that was an invitation. Hey, I can actually do this, and it excites me. That's a big point for me. So yeah, pain can be beautiful if we know how to move through that. And this is a big piece of the men's work, actually, very, very big piece. How we can, again, be with our own feminine, which can be flowy river, or it can be a huge wave. It can be the ocean. So how can we be still inside of the storm? How can we be the eye of the storm and be still in that? And this is a daily practice. How we can be with life, not just the feminine ourselves or the women around us, or how can we be still with life and still harvest the beauty of that, and just realize where we are, what we're doing, and living with that, and really loving life no matter what happens. So this is a big masculine practice, to be with the feminine and being still with that, fully open-hearted.
And the recognition that it's not just the people in our life, the women in our life that are embodying femininity, but the fact that the world around us is feminine energy, I think is really worthwhile to recognize.
Mm.
You mentioned you mentioned that you now enjoy being the mentor, being the guiding masculine figure for people who need it
Mm.
when you didn't have it yourself.
Mm.
This coming full circle in the contribution part of the journey. You also mentioned earlier your brother was a big early mentor for you. You know,
Mm.
he introduced you to capoeira. He was your place to go when you didn't feel welcomed in school.
Mm.
Mentorship is a big thing that you've spoken on from what I've followed on your channels.
Mm.
What is mentorship for you? What place does it have in an individual's journey, and how do you
Mm.
see that role either playing out today or being absent for the majority of
Mm.
today?
Mm. Well, mentors are, I feel, crucial part of our development in our lives.
Mm.
And of course, first it was our parents. They were our first mentors, and then that extended to family members, to whatever we saw on TV, read on books, then teachers in our school. And I remember since I was a kid, I was always observant, very, very curious about the men around me. So I was I was looking a lot at my teachers in school and looking how they behaved and mimic, which kids normally do. And I was always trying to understand what is the right way to be. And now I can say I don't really have any more like a specific concept that I feel as a it has to be like this. I feel masculinity, especially nowadays, and I speak to my friends who do the same work. I feel especially nowadays masculinity is in a big shift. There's a massive paradigm shift happening especially the last, let's say, 2 decades in masculinity. It's also in a time of emergency around masculinity. I feel it's needed to really look deep into that and how we can support each other. And I don't have the picture what it's going to be, but I do feel something is being created which was never happened maybe before in history of humanity. What it is to be a man in the 21st century.
Mm.
You know, someone who we are not hunters anymore. We are literally not hunting anymore. We're not physically protecting our women anymore so much. They can protect themselves. We don't financially contribute so much in that sense because now I think women above 30, I think the rates already came like research that women are already making more money than men by average. So how can we bring our gifts and what are we going to be in this world if all this old paradigm needs are in some way gone? So what are we? How are we going to behave and be? So of course I can say masculinity, it's presence and this and that, but it's very important to explore within what is actually that for me, and also what is that to be in this environment where masculinity is in jeopardy in some way. It's being suppressed and pushed down, especially when I speak about the dark masculine, which is like this warrior archetype. It's so needed in our men nowadays, and at the same time to bring more femininity in the men. So what that is, and this is the exploration we are on. And I feel after all these years since I was a kid, I don't have still an answer, but I do know where to move in which direction with the men and together explore what that is. I don't like to set up anymore. It has to be like this. No, I remove all this. Again, it's a full circle. Forget all the concepts, forget all the techniques, and come back to the basics. To come back really to the core of what is that for you. Yeah.
Yeah, we've had initiation for, as long as humans have been humans pretty well. There's been initiation for men up until recent. And as you mentioned, the last 2 decades, what it means to be a man the traditional concepts have been steadily eroded, steadily dissolved to a lot of men, myself included. We went through a lot of our life, and men go through a lot of their life today wondering there's this basic yearning inside of you you don't know what it is, but you know it needs to be expressed some way. And for a lot of men, like I say, myself included, for a long time, that can be either self-destructive or outwardly destructive, because it's this untamed energy that you don't know where it comes from and what to do with it. Mentorship, creating a circle of men, or having an individual mentor, or number of different men in your life who can contribute their gifts to your own journey, is, I agree, it's so integral to this moment that we live in. I've heard you speak about invoking mentors into your life. When you say, I've heard you say to invoke a mentor and then prepare yourself, or to be ready, because the moment will come. What does that mean? How does one do that? And then what would a journey like that look like for a person?
Yeah, well, you told me about my brother, because I mentioned him, and I didn't reply fully to that question, but I remember this moment of my father leaving when I was a kid, and yeah, him and my mom didn't get along, so he was not there, and I was longing so much. And even as a kid, I didn't know what that means, but I now when I think about it, I was like, shit, I actually was longing a man, and just to feel what that is, because as a kid, we need both. We need parental, of course. If we're lucky, we can have both. But this longing for the other, I didn't understand back then why is it so important. So that role switched to my brother. He was 6 years older, even though he didn't know shit about being a man. Still, he was the closest one, so I was always following his path. I was listening to the music he listens. I was growing hair because he grew hair, and this was my unconscious way of looking for a mentor. And I feel kids do that very similar, like they just don't know what they're searching for, but they do that. And for me, that was my brother. Of course, it's subjective. And later on, like I said, martial arts, which deep down, if I look at it now, I just felt I wanted to embody and feel more myself. I didn't know what that means. I didn't know what I need to do, but I just felt I need to move with that energy and intention and desire, and I feel something will guide me into that direction where I need to go. And that would happen. I met my first capoeira teacher, and then my second teacher, then my master, and then martial arts. And I feel the more clear I had the vision, or maybe even not the vision, the more I had the desire and clarity within me, which energy I want to embody more, if I would put it in those words, life would guide me into specific paths and decisions which will evoke a moment where I'll meet that person who will become, maybe for a moment, maybe it's just 5 minutes, maybe just one sentence, which happened to me multiple times, or it's someone who's going to stay with you for years or for life, to be there for you, to guide you, to support you in your growth, because we need it. I mean, we can, most of us want to, as soon as possible, get away from home and get away from our parents, but eventually we need another mentor, and grown men need that more than ever. We cannot continue growing if we don't have a mentor, at least for some time, in whatever form. Maybe it's a program, maybe it's someone you come to from time to time, but we need that. We cannot see ourselves from outside. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think it comes naturally to us too. As you mentioned, when you're a kid, when you're younger, you don't know what it is, but you do it anyways. You're drawn to it, and you might not even be conscious of the fact that you're doing these things. Probably aren't. But I've noticed in my own life, as I've gotten older, and I've spoken with friends around the same age who I would say have also done, the work is never finished. We're always working on ourselves, but they've done some inner work, and they know themselves better than they did when they were younger. And embarking and continuing on a journey of self-development, it also comes naturally to us who are a little older to want to instill what we can or mentor the younger men around us. It's very natural. It's a natural process, it seems. And from my own experience, I've asked myself a number of times when I've spoken with younger men and realized afterwards, this is a moment that I wish I had when I was their age, and now I'm able to give that to someone. I realize that I'm looking at them as though they were me, and I'm having a second chance to make different decisions or look at challenges or life or opportunities in a different light. It's a really beautiful undercurrent of men that I didn't realize existed until not so long ago. And I feel like if we started to tap into it as a society, realize that the young men are looking for guidance, older men are looking to give that guidance. And if we could make those connections, it would just do so much for, the world at large.
I completely agree. And even this, what you say, underline, I feel it's almost in our, well, not almost, it is, I feel it's in our DNA.
Yeah.
And the more we strip down all these layers and the more we connect with the intuition of the feminine within us, I feel this intuition, how I see it, how I feel it, this guide, you can name it in many different ways, whatever that is for you. There's this voice inside that if we listen, will really say like, fuck, like I even feel this now in my life. I need a mentor. I want a mentor, and I have one. I have multiple actually now. I always try to grow and have the support of these voices, and maybe the crucial word is support, which is to really allow ourselves to ask support. And men are famous for not asking for support. We can be fucking stubborn and we can do everything alone, but that's just bullshit. And often that's an excuse not to really look inside and see what we need, and that we cannot do this alone. And it takes a village to raise a child, and it takes a village to also support a man to become the chief, And but just last note on this, I was last year living in the Amazon in the Yawanawa tribe, and I spent 1 month with them, really studying their culture, their plant medicine, and I noticed how children there who are at the age of 10, the physical wisdom and just embodied masculinity is, if I would compare, which I'm going to do now for this purpose, I feel their 10-year-old is like our 20-year-old.
Oh, wow.
I feel they're so early initiated into manhood and just responsibilities and integrity and taking care of their brothers and sisters. The whole village is basically their brothers and sisters. And they have the chief, which is their mentor. You have another one, so there's mentors everywhere around. And the chief who became the chief, his name is Matsini, he had the support of the shamans, the whole village, to grow into the man he needs to grow. So he has it's like a whole lineage of mentors and mentoring each other. And it's very, very important to have that so we can become the man we want to be, and leaders to embody leadership. So we need support.
Yeah, it's a symbiotic organism. There's not just what's that? It's a famous quote: "No man is an island."
Yeah.
I've heard you. One of the ways that you've spoken about that before is this word "help." Men have a really difficult time asking for help. Like, we are supposed to know what to do, when to do it, how to do it all the time, and that if we have to ask for help, one, we probably won't, but if we do, it means we're weak. Where do you think that comes from? Why do you think we've, compared to this Amazonian tribe who's learned that every man, every woman in their tribe needs support from the larger community, needs support from mentors, from teachers, from the people around them? If that's innate in us, how did we unlearn that and learn this negative view of asking for help, asking for support?
Well, yeah, I mean, like you said, that there is, I mean, the concept of weakness or any that is defined, to describe help, it needs to go out of the window right away. That's such prehistoric, outdated concept which does not serve anyone. And I mean, just to be very plain, it's like it's just bullshit. And we started speaking about men's circle. Dad is asking for help, or whatever that is from your friends or family, and just to say, hey, I need help. And it's not easy because, of course, our culture, and it is a cultural concept that men should be like this, men should be tough, men should be this. So I learned that from my own parents, even my own mother. It's not just from the men. So if you like, there's this paradigm which I do believe comes from times when men had to be in specific ways so they can survive. And I feel it comes from this survival mechanism. But we don't live in that environment anymore. We don't need to hunt anymore. We can just go to the supermarket. We don't need to, again, in connection to women, it's just outdated. And most men that I work with, also worked in the past, and also men that I look around, do not understand even that they need help. And this is a big topic. It's not that they don't want to ask help, they don't even know that they need help. And they're used to carrying all this burden alone, like, I can do it, I'm tough, I can continue. And again, the density of our nervous system needs to slowly unwind and let go. And that's what I mean by becoming a man of the 21st century, someone who can ask for help to begin with, someone who can feel more, someone who can, be in his feminine, who can just be all that he is. And this is a very short explanation of that, but it has to change. It doesn't serve anyone anymore. We are done with that. So,
Well, I think of, you mentioned that in that tribe that you were a part of last year, how they don't even think about it, the asking for support, asking for help. That would be consistent with them also giving support. It's reciprocity. They're asking for support, but they're simultaneously giving support. And I feel like that's a big piece of this that we don't talk about either, which is, we all have our own gifts. We all have our own desires. Women have this too, but a big thing for men is purpose. What is the reason that you get up in the morning and go out into the world and do the things that you do? And that purpose is your unique, is tied to your unique gifts, what you are able to offer. And often that's when people around you are asking for that support, asking for that help. And then that's great. You have these parts of you that are uniquely your own and you can gift to the world around you. But there's also that part of you is supported by other people's gifts, by asking for them to enter your life with the gifts that they have uniquely to themselves, to build something greater, to support each other, to create something larger than the individual.
Yeah, I mean, okay, look, I'm 39 and I feel I started learning this concept in my 20s and my 30s, which is ridiculous. If you think about it, like, we should all know this as kids. And this is what I feel can shift. So I can do my work, but obviously we cannot change the previous generations, but we can support the shift of the next generation. So if I do the work now in my 30s, in my 40s, support other men to do the same, they will bring something new that was needed for ourselves when we were kids to their own future children. And this is, I feel, the shift that needs to happen. So it's a generational thing. It's not so much current. So what I needed as a kid was to feel safe, to feel seen by my parents, to be heard, to be supported in expressing my emotions, even if it's sadness, anger, to have a safe space where I can do that. So I couldn't. There was no space for that. So I do it now in my older years. So I can learn that And I feel this is part of my purpose, to shift that in myself so my children can have a different way of growing up. So they don't need to go through the bullshit I've been, in bullshit. My parents did the best they could, so how can I create something better so my children can learn, and then they can transmute that and create something even better for their own children, etc., etc., etc. So I feel this is the mission and purpose that I feel in my own life when I get up, like to support other men alchemize their own experience into something their own children can reap.
Yeah. That reminds me of there's a book, Absent Fathers, Lost Sons. Have you ever heard of that book?
I heard, but not read. I didn't read it.
It's a great book, but the thing, I mean, this shows up in a lot of men's literature, but in that book, there's also that quote: "Hard times create strong men create good times create weak men create hard times."
Yeah.
And there's this journey, this cyclical nature to it. And I've always had this, not always, but in the last 10 years or so, I've kind of realized that a lot of life it's like a fractal. What is true for the individual is true for the community, is true for the larger community, is true for the country, is true for the world. And as you mentioned, you're taking what you're learning and moving through in your 20s, 30s, and 40s. Well, eventually your 40s. You're not 40 yet, but eventually it's your 40s, and you're instilling that. You're helping the younger generation, your children, and the children that come after, to learn the lessons that you've learned through your life. And that's what I picked up in this book, Absent Fathers, Lost Sons, or Absent Fathers, Forgotten Sons, is we don't ever get it right. Like, no father will ever be perfect. Even if he is there, even if he's done the work, even if he is, even if he knows the importance of initiation, even if he knows that his role as a father with his son and his daughter and his wife and everybody else in his community, how he shows up is integral to the growth. He's going to get some things wrong, but that's part of the process. Those wounds that he causes, those challenges in other people's lives that he causes, as you mentioned at the start of this podcast, that's integral to the process, because those become that person's gift once they move through their own journey, and the process continues. And that's the larger community growth through generations is lifted up by that.
Yeah, I like that a lot. And it's very interesting because my father called me today. We didn't speak for a while. Yeah. And exactly on this topic of, especially when you mentioned the word perfection, and this concept of perfection, whatever that is, it's for me not existing. And something that I told him in the call, because he's very religious and he likes to define everything as good and evil. And I define it as polarities, as life. And I don't define it as good or bad. And I noticed the more, when we spoke about this circle, as I go back to the basics now, I notice how I'm so much more I feel so much more acceptance in myself and also around me, around everything, which means not trying to define as good or bad or light or dark. I just feel acceptance on everything. So if a man enters the space and he shares whatever darkest shadow there is, I feel no judgment anymore, which I might have in the past. And I just feel acceptance of all that is, without even thinking about perfection. So I do my own part. I do my best and accept all that is. And I feel this is one of the biggest lessons maybe I can give to my own child one day, is that all that is welcomed, and there's no right or wrong. There's nothing wrong with you being pissed off. There's nothing wrong with you feeling sad, or which was always in my generation pushed aside. There's no denial of anything. So all that is. And this is, I feel, one of the biggest gifts which I would love to leave to my own children one day, and they can decide what they're going to do with that. But I feel this is an important piece which I find now after all this time and years of self-development. I feel now I'm learning to accept all that is without trying to change it and be with that. And there I feel the healing and the transformation is. Yeah.
That's beautiful. That reminds me of David Data's Third Stage Man. You know,
Yeah.
you're embodying. My understanding of it is, and actually a lot of my understanding comes from my conversation with you today, and what I've learned from you through your content is, you know, if we go back to that idea of dance, right? Like what you spoke about before, the masculine's role in that is to have the direction, set the pace, know how to lead the feminine so that she can blossom and do exactly what she does, which is flow like the river down the banks, as you mentioned. And it sounds like what you just mentioned now is you've come to this place where you can be steadfast in your masculine. You can be guiding, you can be directive, but you allow the world, which is the feminine, to blossom around you and to do what it does without trying to harness it or trying to control it in any way, and just observe it for what it is, how it unfolds.
Yeah, it's a full acceptance of not trying to change or shift anything. This is a big masculine practice. And one of the shadows of the masculine is trying to constantly fix. This is one of the masculine shadows, always trying to fix because something needs to change and come back to a specific state, which is the opposite of what I'm saying now, basically. So again, acceptance of all that is and learning how to be in this space of eternal change is one of the ultimate practices of the men's work that I feel. And same in dancing. In dancing, I always say there are no mistakes. There are no wrong steps. There's no like, oh, I made a wrong step. No, there's no wrong step. You just made a step. And this is the play we want to encourage in life. You know, just continue rolling, continue moving, keep the energy flowing, and it will find its way. So yeah.
That's beautiful. Well, Nemanja, I want to be respectful of your time because I realize we're over an hour now. And I could ask you questions for probably the next, few hours, and you have a wealth of knowledge. I'm sure you could expand on so much more. I would love just to maybe end this conversation before we learn more about where people can find you. With where you are today and the work that you're doing and the lessons that you've learned on the journey, what do you wish more people knew about the process, the people that haven't reached out to you, the people who haven't gone through processes like this, the people who, like, let's think about the man who has that yearning inside. He doesn't know how to label it. He doesn't know what it is. He doesn't know where it's guiding him. He just knows that it exists and it's pulling him somewhere. What do you wish those men knew, and how would you speak to them right now?
Can you maybe formulate the question a bit differently?
Yeah, of course. So, we talked about how men's work, or you spoke about how men's work, everybody needs men's circles, men's work in their life, or every man needs men's work, men's circles in their life. There's a pull, there's a calling inside of men from the time that they pretty well reach puberty that's guiding them somewhere, but there's no way to facilitate it without mentorship, without men's work, without men's circles, without support around them. To the men who feel that, but don't have those support structures, don't have men's work in their life, don't have men's circles, and maybe for the first time they're only learning about this from this conversation, what do you wish those men knew about themselves and how they could start to grow? And how would you speak to them in right now? Like, what would you get over to them as a message?
That's a good question. Well, to begin with is to have the sense of that it's okay to ask for help. Because of course, what is each man needed or young, whatever age that is, it's subjective, it's individual. but to feel into what do you need, to like what do you need in your life, or maybe to check in what do you long for now in your mind, in your life, like what do you feel you're missing, or just to self-inquire these questions and see what is needed, and then from there move and allow yourself to, when I say evoke, like you said in the past, to also energetically allow and give space to that person to come. So maybe it's going to be in a form of a teacher, or maybe it's even a brother, you never know. If you're in high school, maybe it's really some teacher, if you're lucky to have that. Maybe some person who just do something or say something that evoke something new, help support you to grow, or you move into a direction of finding a mentor. And yeah, that can be one way to, like I said, to begin with, to ask for support, to feel what kind of support you need. And even if you don't, at least feel, hey, I actually need support. Maybe don't know why. Maybe that's why I need a mentor, to guide me into feeling what I actually need, because maybe I don't know. And later on, whatever that age is, to really practice that, to receive help, to receive support, because practicing to receive that, it basically means it's a practice of receiving love. So it's a practice of opening your heart and giving yourself not just to a mentor, but also to your family, to your partner, to receive love from all directions. Because mentor, I feel this is part of that. It's he's sharing, he or she is loving you in whatever you are, and supporting you grow, supporting you just be that. So that's one element, to really recognize these pieces and to say, hey, it's okay to ask for help.
Yeah, that's and creating this space. I like how you mentioned maybe you don't know what the support is or how it's going to take shape. I know for myself, even in where I'm at in my life right now, mentorship is something that I didn't realize when I was younger I wanted as badly as I did. I didn't even know that what mentorship was. As I got older, I realized how deeply I craved it. And as you just mentioned now, just the initial process to inviting mentors into your life can just be recognizing that you crave support, that you crave help, that there are some things that you don't know. You don't know them, and you need support. You want guidance, and to create a space for those people to show up in your life. I love that. And speaking of mentors, speaking of people to show up in your life to support you in your growth, that is something that you do. You're a fantastic mentor to men. And I know that you work with women as well, and in a great deal of ways. So people listening to this podcast, people hearing what you have to get across and your experiences in life and how you're now contributing to other people's personal development and self-growth. For someone who wants to reach out and invite you into their life as a mentor, where can they find you, and how can they connect with you?
Yeah, basically my website, my Facebook, my Instagram is the same, which is Nemanja Sonero. So it's NEMANJASONERO.com. So that's my website. Same name on Instagram and Facebook. So there you'll be able to always reach me through these means and private messages. And on my website I explain a bit more, of course, what are the offerings that I do. But overall, I love working with men. I also love, since recently, which makes sense, I started also working with women, because that happens very naturally for me, because as I became more in my own masculinity, in my own femininity, in my wholeness, who I am, it of course attracts also women, because women also long to feel safe around men. This is a whole nother topic, of course, but women are longing so much to feel safe and seen and heard from a man who can do that. And this is part of the work. The more we become that, the more we can become this for all of the women in this world. So this is what I do. And mentoring groups, one-on-ones. And soon I'm starting a beautiful online mentorship with 2 more brothers from Europe and 3 more brothers from the States. So we're creating this global emergence brotherhood.
Oh, amazing.
It's a beautiful project that we want to really bring people from all over the world and create, because that's what the name is, emergence. It's time of an emergence to step up, to step out, to call each other out in a beautiful way, to call out the power that we have within. And this is something that is going to begin in September. And you can also contact me if you would like to know more. But it's a beautiful piece of men coming together and exploring what it is to be a man in this world now. How we can rise together.
That's amazing. I think it's such an interesting time to do this type of work, because you think, this emergence project that you have, traditionally we'd be sitting around a fire, and we'd be talking about things that are different but very similar, because we all live and we're experiencing the same life. But you think about connecting with men all around the world who are doing the work, who are willing to do the work. Our experiences are all the same, but they're different, and they're wildly different depending on where you grew up. So it's beautiful that this is going to be a place where men can feel support from other men who are experiencing very similar trials, tribulations, and achievements and whatnot. But the context with which they're experiencing it is giving a new perspective, a new color to the other men who exist in other places of the world. So it's just such a unique and beautiful time to be doing this type of work. I love it.
Yeah, I think it's needed more than ever, to be honest, especially after this whole year and a half of madness.
Yeah.
I feel men long so much, and I see it it really breaks my heart sometimes to see how men are longing for support.
Oh yeah.
This is your original question, like how can they ask? And of course, it can be a mentorship, it can be many different aspects. But we need each other now. Like brotherhood is the healing. Coming together is the healing part. And so I feel very grateful I can do this work now. Yeah.
Well, Nemanja, I appreciate you very much. I appreciate the work that you're doing, and I know that a lot of people listening to this conversation, especially the idea of the spiral. When we think about the hero's journey, we often think of this single event, and I love that you've made me think about how this is a continuum. We don't just have one event in our life. We're consistently growing and consistently returning to the initiation of the hero's journey. So I appreciate you and your time, and I look forward to seeing you grow and checking out the embodied men's program that you're putting together.
Yeah, thank you for the invitation. Thank you for you creating this space where we can talk about this, because just talking about it's already opening even more safety for many to express, to ask for help, what we just said. So thank you for creating this container for that and for your work.
Thanks again for checking out this episode of the Power Plant Body Podcast. If you enjoyed it, I'd be grateful if you left it a rating and review in iTunes, because when you leave it a rating and review, it really helps. It lets iTunes know, and they'll be more likely to promote it to others who could also benefit from hearing these conversations. And feel free to share this episode with people who could also benefit from Nemanja's insights into masculine and feminine energy and self-development. You can find Nemanja on Instagram at Nemanja_Sonero. That's at NEMANJA_SONERO, and at his website, www.nemanjasonero.com. Depending on when you're listening to this, Nemanja is also co-facilitating an upcoming event called Emergence, a brotherhood journey into freedom, love, and purpose. This is a 3-month program designed to empower and support you in accessing and sharing your innate gifts and strengths, all done in a group container that deepens bonds of brotherhood. It starts September 5th and goes until December 6th, and you can register by going to www.emergencbrotherhood.com/Europe. That's EMERGENCBROTHEROD.com/EUROPE. You can also say hi to Nemanja on Facebook by checking him out at facebook.com/Nemanja.Sonero. Don't forget to head over to powerplantbody.com/free-tools to get your hands on a free copy of the Goal Wheel PDF, along with tons of other free tools. I'm regularly adding new resources to that page to help you create the best version of yourself, so you'll definitely want to bookmark it. You can find me on Instagram at The Vegan Trainer. and feel free to send me a DM if you have any questions or suggestions for future episodes. Thanks again for spending some time with Nemanja and I today, and I'll see you in the next episode.